Well, some people follow writing a lot better than verbally, and other people have to hear it to understand things.
Unfortunately, hearing me speak is an unrewarding experience. I was never a very good speaker. And of course, I made my living by speaking to classes. And when you're in front of a group and you have something to say, it's surprising how it just kind of flows. The garbage just spews, as they say. And so that's one thing that was a tremendous benefit to me. I started out teaching with pieces of paper with my lectures written out on them. I'd kind of say, and today we're going to be talking about, and so forth, looking at the page. Well, one time I had 15 minutes left in the class. I ran out of pages. And I said, well, that's it for today. Let's meet again on Thursday. So by that time I had plenty written out in advance. Things got a whole lot better with time. In fact, I could go into class with no preparation at all and deliver a good lecture. By good, I mean convincing and worthwhile and so forth. Certainly not skilled speaking at all. And my speaking has gotten much worse over the years. It was pretty good for a while there when I was teaching classes, but now we don't really, like, well, what's for breakfast today, Peg? I don't know, let's try Wheaties. That sort of conversation doesn't take you very far when you're speaking in front of a group. But I still speak in front of groups occasionally and give technical lectures and all that, and it works out sort of by habit. You know what you're going to say. You got maybe an outline of things that you want to make sure you don't forget, and just go to it. But the best thing to do is just relax and let it flow. This recording here hasn't been particularly successful in terms of relaxing and letting it flow, because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be saying until I actually say it. You probably noticed that I would pause and continue on kind of in a jerky fashion. I've never been comfortable speaking, even in a small group, even among just yourself, for example. I don't come through with a torrent of wisdom or anything like that. It just kind of comes in jerks and fits and starts.
So now that you've retired from your teaching, do you have any time to do anything? Or are you more busy now than before?
Well, working backwards, I'm more busy now than ever before, because people have had this whole year free to think up things to do. Like, let's have a Zoom meeting on this. For example, we went to Norway one summer and had a great time caving and exploring karst areas with an international group. And there was a reunion of sorts that was given earlier this year. Or actually, it was toward the end of last year in the fall. And so there was a Zoom meeting, and we were just reminiscing about various things that were significant to us and what we had learned, and wondered who was doing what. And so it was a perfect situation for a Zoom meeting. Do I miss teaching? The answer is not really. I enjoyed it immensely, and I would never consider doing anything else for a living, unless it was playing poker or something. No, to be serious, I did a whole lot better than I thought I would. I was never a good speaker. I was uncomfortable in a group, and I needed to be sure of what I was talking about, which is sometimes a little bit difficult when you're doing differential equations and things. And so I found that it worked out fabulously well. Somehow or other, it just came together. And I was able to explain the math clearly to people. I think having trouble understanding things myself was a benefit because I could understand what would trip up people when they first encountered things like an integral sign and that sort of thing. I was never terribly good at math, but I ended up teaching as much math as anybody in the department, more so than anybody. Computer science was something that I had no training in. Although I did work for General Electric during the summers in between semesters at Williams College. And I was in charge of it was turned out to be a secret weapon of some kind of rocket launcher. And all I had was the parts lists and all that sort of thing. It would be like screw number 275 goes in here. There's a wire that goes from here to there and so forth. And I was able to understand what was going on, what kind of data needed to be accumulated, and how it gets punched into cards, which of course nobody does now anymore. But there were two secretaries there typing away, putting in the information that I was supplying. And for somebody who is still in his teens and having no previous experience, was quite a learning experience. And so sitting in front of a class or standing in front of a class just required that I be confident in what I was talking about, and then the words would flow. And so that worked out pretty well. And so I'm not sure quite where this leads to because it's going in several directions at the same time. But I just learned to speak in front of a group by simply doing it because I had to. And there would be times when I'd walk into class and I had no idea what I was going to say. And between the door and the podium where I was speaking from, or the table I was speaking from, I would decide what the topic was going to be and just how I would present it. And it would come through quite clearly because I'd done it before, for one thing. And also I was fairly confident in what I was talking about. And the most important thing perhaps was an attentive audience because they knew that this was important to their future. And they needed to pay attention to what was going on in order to understand it. So I had kind of a double advantage there because number one, I had difficulty with math in school, but by paying attention to it, I was able to survive. And the other thing is that this was leading toward a career. It wasn't just something you were doing for the fun of it. And it wasn't just for the benefit of your soul or anything. It wasn't as though math is good for you. You'd better take these courses. You better take calculus because everybody else has it, and so forth. There's a well-known computer program that solves hydrology questions like underground water flow. If you have an aquifer with water in it, of course, and you've got a well in it, which is your main goal, what would happen when you pump that well? Well, computer programs will assess that for you. But they can't just make up things. They have to be fed information that you've collected in the field, like how much drawdown do you get in a well when you pump it a certain amount. And so you punch that information in, the permeability and things of that sort, the thickness of the aquifer and such. And I made up our own program, which was supposed to kind of speed things along. You were able to enter the data to it, and it would go from there and solve all the problems that you wanted. And it was graphical. I'm kind of a graphical kind of person. I need to see pictures of what's happening. There was a computer program available at that time in the United States Geological Survey. And it turns out that one of my classmates at Williams College had been one of the leaders in developing that program. He died, unfortunately, very early have a brain tumor. I don't think the tumor was caused by computer programming, but it was really a sad situation. Bright guy, brilliant guy. And so I was following in his footsteps, but I was kind of making it up as I went along, and it turns out that I understood what troubles people would have feeding the data into this program. And so I sort of made it easy for them to do it. And just asking, okay, now what's the permeability in this area? Can you block out the area that's going to have this permeability and so forth? But the thing is that the program itself that the USGS put together would think, you push the go button, and what you would get is a little figure of a running horse. The horse never actually moved, but he was obviously galloping pretty fast. And you just sit there and watch the little horse until finally you get the answers. And the answers would be numbers printed out in a kind of a grid pattern. And it didn't seem particularly exciting, so I thought, let's do it this way. Let's block out the aquifer on the screen to begin with. Draw in where the boundaries are and assign the various variables to each area. For example, the permeability, the porosity, and various other aspects. Directional permeability is the permeability greater in this direction and in this direction, and so forth. And then you would put locations of wells in the aquifer. And all you needed was the locations of the wells. Then you started the program, and it would ask you, okay, what's the pumping rate at these various wells? So you put those in, and then you would add other information if it hadn't already been entered. And you push the button, and instead of a running horse that's sort of sitting there stagnantly, you've got a multicolor image of the water table being drawn down around the wells. If you had several wells, you'd have the water table dropping down in a very complex well, deepest where the pumping rate is greatest, and so forth. And you could see by the different colors showing up how far down the water table was being drawn. And you could also register how much water was being pumped out. You could change that as you went along. So if you wanted to pump like crazy for 10 minutes and then not pump at all for a while, you could do that. And so it was a program that people learned on and then went off to graduate school. And they already knew how to not only run a program like that, but also how to devise it. So that was one of the major achievements.